Well, welcome everybody to the second hour of MindShifters Radio. Today is Thursday, May the 4th, 2023. And their call-in number is 563-999-81. And press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and your questions because that makes this your show. We'll give Michael a moment to dial in, and I see we already have a hand up, but we will give him just a second to dial in there. And good conversation. Actually had a similar conversation with someone the other day about all of the things that were happening in their life. And I said, yeah, there are situations going on that are in actuality, but the way that you react to it is that's the actuality out there. The reality, what's going on in your head. So, you can choose to be upset or not. And I said it's kind of like playing tug-of-war. Person needs you to respond, to give them feedback for whatever it is that they're needing to heal. Like if you hold fear, then the other person maybe holds anger, and you bounce off each other. And so if you drop your end of the rope, it changes their game. They may still act the same way, but if you don't have the response, the reaction, which is an action that you're doing again, then they will have to go they'll either change and quit behaving however they're behaving, or they'll go find someone else to behave that way with, because they still need that feedback until they're ready to look at whatever it is, whether it's their anger or whatever. And as Michael says, anger is a drug. It's actually not an emotion. It's what we use to hide the fear or the pain or whatever it is that we're not wanting to look at. And, we maybe associate that with weakness, and so we associate anger with strength, and we may call it protection or defense or whatever, but that's covering it. So if you're doing a worksheet, oftentimes if you do the worksheet on what's underneath the anger, the fear or the pain, then you won't need the anesthetic of the anger. And so I see Michael has joined us, so I'm going to say welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart. Welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're here. And we get to move forward to the next level of this conversation about first century Aramaic forgiveness. And one of the things that I really love about doing this show is that you just never know when somebody's going to call in that's going to have the very question that one gives you the opportunity to heal, and or teases out the piece of information that just opens a whole new wow. And I had that happen in a conversation I had just the other day with someone, and it's just like we are so blessed that we get to engage in all of these conversations. And sometimes they're not so exciting, but when you really hang with it and listen, the gifts are just monumental. So thank you, each and every one, for participating in this thing called MindShifters Radio. And so, Ms. Jeanie, do you have any? I heard you say you had a hand up, so let's just go ahead and say hello.
All righty. I believe it's David, 206. You are on the air. Welcome.
Waitresses.
Are you there, David?
Yeah.
Hey, welcome, David.
Yeah.
Hello.
He must not realize he's on yet, and he's talking to somebody else in the background.
Yeah, knock it out.
So I'm going to mute him for a minute.
Go on.
Maybe he'll call right back in. So
Sure.
that's the only hand that was up right now.
Okay, well, let's check
and so
again
the
and see if he's back.
conversation was on what was going on inside of us, not something that's outside of us, and how we respond to the outside event.
Yes. Yes, the ones who want to make us vacate, i.e. make us feel or do anything, are oftentimes the very ones that we most need in our lives to give us that opportunity to look at the part of us that wants to be angry or escape or run away or fight or strife or whatever it happens to be. And so we're here to open space to embrace all of it. And let's see if David's turned his attention back toward his microphone yet.
Actually, he dropped off, so maybe he'll call in.
Oh, okay.
Call back in.
Okay. Cool. Stress. There's an awesome worksheet on our website called the Mind Goal Management Worksheet. And the Mind Goal Management Worksheet shows you how to, or is a format for doing the 5 things that the faculty of will is able to do. We have a spiritual faculty called will, and that's what's designed to manage our minds. Sadly, most people's minds are managed by the goals of their related to their unresolved pain, or the goals of the unresolved pain of generations and generations and generations. Like, if you have no patience for something or somebody, then perhaps there's an issue around patience, and you get the opportunity to hold space for what's going to move in you when that happens. And our minds are not designed to be driven by unresolved goals from the past, whether it's your past or generational past. And we literally have millions of goals in our minds. Every time that a goal is set within the mind, that goal either must be achieved or canceled. Elsewise, it will run forever under the surface. Oftentimes when you say to somebody, why did you do that? And they say, scratch their heads, kind of, I don't know. It's because it was an unresolved goal under the surface that they weren't even conscious was running their minds. And so there are 5 things that this spiritual faculty called will can do. Will can frame a goal. Will can set a goal. Will can maintain a goal. Will can select a goal for immediate attention. And then the biggest one that's missing from our culture is will can cancel a goal. And so there's a worksheet for strengthening and developing that faculty of will on whyagain.org. And so if you access that website, worksheet, what you'll see is there's a brief explanation at the top that talks about these 5 faculties of will and the strengthening of them. And then there's a format for canceling goals from yesterday, for framing goals for tomorrow, and then in the first thing in the morning for getting up and looking at, reviewing the goals that you have framed, and then determining whether or not they're appropriate to set for today and taking it all to the next level. So that worksheet is on the website. If you want the streaming or the DVD workshop that goes along with that, you can go to the catalog and you'll find a workshop entitled Getting the Stress You Need. Stress is one of the most important things in life, and stress comes from one thing and one thing only, and that is setting a goal. And so that's a part of this whole process of understanding the process of how the mind works and bringing the mind into harmony with your highest intuitive guidance and your vision. Vision not having anything to do with eyes, but rather vision being that capacity within us from the higher state of mind to conceive of what's possible in our lives, even if we're not at the possible. Even if the possible isn't showing up in our world, can I envision it? And that's the first step to bringing it into our world. Probably the greatest atrocity done to us as human beings down through the ages is that we've had hidden from us the fact that we are by nature creators. You and I are creative beings. And that's an idea that, pretty much everybody really likes. Oh boy, that's a great idea. I love the idea of being a creator, unless, of course, the creation isn't going so well, and then they know who the problem really is in their lives, and notice it's always somebody else. If there's somebody else if there's somebody in your life that you think needs to change in order for your life to get better, then just know that you're living in denial. You're dissociating from the very content in your mind that is the problem, and it's undoing that dissociation that happens through forgiveness. And our culture tells us that our forgiveness is about somebody else and letting them off the hook. We're not talking about forgiveness in that regard. We're talking about pardoning. And what forgiveness does is allows us to make contact with the unconscious part of us that's creating the attractive energy, the resonance that brings in the why is this happening to me again experience. And so our whole body of work is about moving out of those dynamics and really truly moving into the truth of who we are as human beings. Who are we really? Hold a newborn child. You know exactly what the truth is about you. It is that you are the active presence of love. And it's the forgiveness of everything unlike that. I talk to so many people, and they'll talk about a problem in their lives, and they'll give me the whole description, and they'll say, and yeah, it's all their fault. It's all their problem. It's like, it's got nothing to do with me. Excuse me, you just told me about all this trauma going on inside of you, and you're telling me about how it's somebody else's fault? Surely you jest. Yeah, but that's the basis of the culture. Again, the effect that most people by the age of 4 in this culture are card-carrying members of the one-world religion of blame. It's all somebody else's fault. And guess what? It's anybody else's fault. In fact, the people who you most want to blame it on are the people who are showing you the deepest hidden parts of your own mind and giving you the awesome opportunity to work through those parts of your own mind. And so a thank you is due. But generally speaking, it takes some real growth to get to that thank you, to get to the point of recognizing there's a thank you appropriate here. So why is this happening to me again? Because I'm a creator. And if I don't like what I'm creating, it's time for me to own it and start to make a change. Did I hear your voice, Miss Jeanie?
Yeah, we have a hand up, and I believe that it's Peter. We haven't heard from you in a long time, sir. How are you?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Hello there.
Hey, Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
How do you be, sir?
You hear me okay?
You're loud and clear.
I'm good.
It's like you're right next door instead of in Sweden. Technology's awesome, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I second your first sentence about how everything is just beautiful and you get to go deeper in the process and just something happened, the next caller call in and whatever you go through with that. And because when you spoke to Magda the other day, it was just right on track, as you say. Super interesting.
You mean that the gift of her conversation gave you what you needed?
Yes.
Sweet.
Indeed. And it was so clearly, I mean, like you said, I'm in Sweden, so it's the other side of the planet, and we have all these solutions, and yet it's as if I was sitting next to the two of you when you were having that conversation, and what was happening right here was like as if I was having the conversation with you.
Nice.
So it's really interesting.
Awesome. It's the whole thing. I mean, the fact that we have a human life and what we're discovering about having a human life, to me, is just so monumental and such a gift. It's beyond amazing. I was actually thinking about you yesterday as I was doing some work in the garden and getting ready to get out some biochar and put it to work in the garden, and that you were doing that at Heartland better than 2 decades ago.
Yep.
Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I called in just to let you know that I've found the code. I think you say. I got the code. I know what it's all about now. It's all good. And,
all right.
I had Tanya.
Tell us.
To everything, the code to everything. Tanya was sharing something from work, and this is what I meant with you and my conversation. But Tanya was sharing with me that, and I could something at work, and it was some kind of friction there, and I could so clearly tell that. And I told her, Tanya, exempt no one from your love. I mean, that's something I heard from you. But the phrase was so clearly, and I could see how she was, by doing that very thing that she was pointing finger and locking out, she was closing places within herself. And it was so clear, so I told Tanya, exempt no one from your love. And then we went to bed, and the next morning I woke up, and early, like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, which is not my normal time. And I stayed in bed, still eyes closed, and went through all these different, like spontaneous meditation. I started to relax my body, and I was lying there for like an hour, and just more and more the next step of relaxation, and just kept finding new places and relax. And then the other phrase came, in my defenselessness, my safety lies, and with the tension that I experienced was some kind of armored believing that I believed that was going to help me, but the relaxation constantly. So then the phrase came, in my defenselessness, my safety lies, and then I had all these different things, like the gentle art of blessing, and I don't remember, this was probably this weekend, so I don't remember all of it now. But I had to go. I was going to go to work, so I left before Tanya had gone up to bed, but I was experiencing bliss. I probably had 2 hours of going through all these different things in my mind, and I texted her saying, "Oh, now I know it all. So I'm going to meet each client, because I was going to work. I'm going to meet each client.
Right.
Namaste, I greet that which is closest to me, which is closest to you. Gentle art of blessing. Instead of exempt everybody, include everybody in my love." And it was just, I knew it all. It was just obvious.
I hear you.
And then, and it was really blissful. I was really, really blissful. I'm driving to work.
Human life.
I had smiled from ear to ear. And by evening time, Tanya had to stop me from writing an email to a person who I really wanted to suck it to. And so
next opportunity.
Again, that is to me so interesting and amazing, because I mean, like a live, in real life mind shifter.
That's awesome. But you know, that line is from the Course in Miracles, exempt no one from your love. But do you remember what the rest of it says? That passage?
Well, I heard you say it, but no.
Yeah. Oh. Exempt no one from your love, or you will be hiding a darkened place within your own mind where healing is not welcome.
Exactly.
Every so-called body that we think we see outside of us is actually a construct in the mind, and is constructed out of, when there's some form of hostility or fear, it's constructed out of what we're hiding from ourselves. When we can extend love into what appears to be that person out there, but is really the energy pattern within ourselves, and that love reaches down beneath, then that's where the real healing happens. One of the things that I rediscovered on a whole new level just a couple of nights ago. Woke up probably about 4 in the morning, as you were talking about, and Jeanie was, sort of, her stomach was gurgling and some stuff going. So I reached over and put my hands on her, and what I was taught in that moment, is kind of in that in-between state, sensitive place. And what I was taught was that the other thing is to exempt no part of you from your breath, because it is the breath that extends the love into the tissue structure where the darkened places are hidden. And so that was just for me, a refinement on what you're talking about, and realizing the importance of being able to extend the breath into every part of the structure, because that's what delivers the presence of love into our own physiology.
So it's really, everything is really easy, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's a challenging process.
I would say simple, not necessarily easy.
Good refinement. Good refinement. It's all there.
Because the challenge is to remember when you're up to your Bipian alligators that the objective was to drain the swamp.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it was so clear looking at Tanya that she is now, i.e., killing herself in this process, because with the process that she was doing. Then the night after that, I was in the very same state. But as you're saying now, it is beautiful and simple. And sharing, I did some archery today, and being in contact with, because the whole passage that you read the other day, with this exempt no one from your love, I can't recite it, but hearing all that, and I was doing some archery today, and I think I shared this before, you go to a full draw length, you anchor underneath your chin, and then there's like 2 more millimeters you need to draw, and then there's a draw indicator, and then you release the arrow. And that is like the symbol of life itself. You're so, now it's going to happen, now it's time of reckoning, now it's time of measuring. And I, again today, noticing that I was just so much fear in that very moment, because now I'm going to be judged, my perception was. And then I did some forgiveness after that, and the very same thing came up, that what I wanted was that 2 millimeter process is so to embrace and to include and to welcome that process. So the opposite of exempt, and doing a lot of crying, and because that was the if you change the word from archery to life, so to welcome, to embrace, and to include life, i.e. love. And it was just such a powerful process today.
Sweet. And taking the time each day to cultivate our relationship with ourselves as love becomes a really key part, so that when those challenging times comes along, I can go, oh yes, but that's not who I am. Spending time just really presencing the truth about yourself as love in your own physiology. To me, that's such a key. And again, the breath is part of engaging in that process. And I didn't know before this interaction that I had with Jeanie that it was the breath that actually brings the presence of love into the deeper tissue structures. And when we're only shallow breathing, we're not supplying the rest of the structure with that presence. And it's like literally the carrier and the delivery vehicle for life to the cell. So thank you for sharing that discovery and passing it along to everybody. That's truly, truly deeply valuable.
And on that note, I have a question. As you
Go
know, my father passed, and
yes.
I shared with you the process that I had, which was a beautiful process, not a desired process, but it was a beautiful process.
Right.
And at the same time, I'm kind of looking at it now because it's now 6 weeks ago, and
right.
Why is it, like I shared, I had this epiphany in the morning that now I know this is the way to go about life, and then by evening time the next issue was surfacing. But during these 2 weeks with my father that I spent pretty much 24/7, I'm thinking now that I was able to keep or stay in the presence of love more so than any other 2 weeks in my life.
Yeah.
Maybe not minus when I was young. So why was I able to stay in that space, even though there was a lot of crying going on? There was, like I think I mentioned to you, I had this. You say in your book there's Eskimos has 52 different words for snow, and I felt that I had 52 different words for crying. So there was a lot of that going on, but at the same time, I felt, looking back, I felt more love presence. I was more being present in the love that I am than ever before during those 2 weeks.
My take there would be, Peter, that your intuitive knowing, once you made a commitment to be that close to your father, that connected, that caring of and for your father in his passing, my take would be that stronger part of you, that true being, was awakened on a new level. And that would be one of the reasons why you'll tend to keep unfolding insights as time unfolds from here. But the demand, the call for it from him and your willingness to respond, to me, would be key. And that it was, without question, in the last few days of his life, the most important thing you could have done for him, aside from taking care of his physical needs, which, as you shared, you did. But my take would be that another part of you, another part of knowing takes over, and the ego stuff becomes secondary. I remember when I had my first, what I've called, you've heard me describe before, as an opening experience, where I just had this full, total knowledge of the presence of love and how this energy system worked. And for almost a year, approximately a year after that, like literally from one day to the next, it was a Thursday evening, I was at Unity in Delray Beach, and I was delivering a lesson in the Course in Miracles class on the difference between healing a cell and healing the genes that are the source of the cell. It was like something I was being taught in that class as I presented. It's not information that I knew, but I was being taught it. And I went home and I sat down, and I mean, it was just like so exciting. And I started to write, and I thought I'd written pages. When I finally came back to, I'd only written a couple of lines, but a bolt of light shot up my spine into my brain and exploded there. And the knowing, the presence, the bliss was beyond all comprehension. And you know, the day before, there were issues with people around me and things going on that, you know, I would still carry upset about. one of the things in this opening experience that I had, I could ask any question that I wanted to ask, and I was given a full visual answer and a non-auditory verbal response. So it was explained to me. And at one point I asked about the ego, and I was shown a little playful puppy with something in its mouth. And in that state, like I've got this state of bliss going on, and it's like the puppy's kind of jumping around with this thing. Is like, here, take this, here, look. And I can remember saying to myself, you think I'm going to give this up for that? You've got to be kidding. And out of that experience, it took me about a year before, resonance took over, and issues that my mind told me were disturbing me, but were really just things showing me my own disturbance. The day before that happened, some of them started to come back into the point where they were important enough to get into upset about. So once you get that pull, or my experience is once I got that pull, it took time for the daily issues that I still hadn't worked through to come up to a level of import, a level of noise or interference that I could, turn my awareness over to the puppy and go, okay, let's get into this trauma or that upset. So my take would be, it would have been just the fact that you made the commitment and the energy that your father asked of you and that you responded to. And what a gift to give him, what a gift to give you, to give your family system, what a gift to give the world. And, most people, you've heard me talk before about this song that Joel Goldstein, who was the original music director at Heartland, wrote. And the song, the title or the melody line of the song is "Stuck in My Story, My Pain and My Glory." And when you have a peak experience like you had with your dad, like the one I'm talking about that I had way back when, that peak experience tends to extend further and further into our lives as we allow it to. But in that peak experience, the recognition of the import and not turning it over to the ego mind, it's like the puppy offers its upset, its disturbance, and it's like, no thanks. I think I'll have a Rockma. I think I'll have a Rockma instead.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know if this will help or not, but you said your dad passed 6 weeks ago. Mine did too. And one of the things, we were having a breath session that morning, and I actually had like a spiritual connection with Dad and told him, he had struggled long enough and that he could go. I mean, it's been a rough year for him. And that afternoon after the breath workshop, we went to visit him, and within about 30, 45 minutes of us getting there, he did pass. And it was, there was sorrow at his leaving, but, actually it was phenomenal. Michael and I were holding his hands and talking to him, and Dad hadn't been able to roll over in bed or get up in bed, out of bed or anything in a year, and he sat straight up in bed and looked over in the left corner of the room, and his eyes were huge, and he took a breath and he laid down and was gone. And they were going to bring him back, and I'm like, no. I said, he's already, even before he left his body, he was already in the other realm. And, I said, don't bring him back to this. And there was a peace, even though it was a mixture with sorrow, to let it go.
Let it go.
Yep.
Beautiful. So the question then, in my mind, remains, so how do you create that urgency, if you call it an urgency? Well, like you say, Michael, that because of the commitment to the process and being there with my father, I was actually sharing this with Elliot. He was came home for the funeral. I didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking, so why am I not able to bring that, or why am I, Peter, not able to, as readily as those 2 weeks with my dad, able to get into that space with my son sitting here now. I so wanted to be in that presence of love readily available, and I didn't have the same experience as I did with my dad. Question mark.
Michael, I hear you talking, but you're not coming through the
Excuse
phone.
me. I had pushed my mute button. My take would be that it didn't happen with your dad because you willed it to happen. It happened with your dad because the energy was right for it. You had done enough work to experience it. It isn't an act of your mind saying, oh, I'd like this to be what's true for now. And as you do your work, there will come a point with your son when you've cleared enough noise out, enough of your own drama, trauma, pain, unresolved issues around your son, when you clear that out, that will happen spontaneously with your son. But it's when you realize the inertia-bound mass of past energetic trauma that is in each one of us from our generations. I don't know if you were on the radio show back, it's getting probably close to a year ago now, but I was doing a still point session, and I was guided in that moment to look downward. I mean, my eyes are closed, I'm laying down doing still point breathing, and I'm guided to look down. So I turn my eyes downward, and I see this unfathomable, just such a huge space of darkness. It's like more space than I can imagine was just filled with darkness, and then there were an uncountable number of lights in that darkness, small spots of light. And I'm, I turn my eyes down, I'm looking at this, and it's like, what is this? And what was explained to me, again, by a voice that isn't speaking, but a silent voice, that these were my ancestors and the darkness that they were stuck in, and that they were making a request of me to assist and become the space that could process that darkness. It's not a simple act of will to just say, okay, now I'm going to free myself from the darkness for a week or 2 weeks, or because this is happening, or because I want to. It's a result of circumstance and the fruit of your work. If the work you've done is sufficient to warrant that drama and trauma dropping away, even if it's just for a moment, then it's going to drop away. And if I haven't done the work, people will have that experience, and others will be in the room and they'll go, well, nothing happened for me, so that's all just baloney. Well, no, you haven't done your work, so no, of course you wouldn't get a taste of that. You wouldn't get a sense of that. So it's like, I'm not even sure how, I'm making up words. I'm making up a way to understand it because we don't have words for the experience. But my take is that it's kind of like a reward you get when you've done the work to be ready for that to open and for that to happen. And it doesn't happen on demand. It happens as a result of a confluence of circumstances, a gathering of all kinds of circumstances that make you ripe for it, and bang, there it is. And it's escaping. Maybe a good example might be we've got this rocket in space, and it's circling the Earth, and it's stuck in the Earth's orbit. What kind of energy is it going to take for that rocket to break out of that orbit, the inertia that it's stuck in and gravity holding it to the Earth, to break out of that orbit and break off into space? And it's, in terms of space travel, it takes another rocket engine going off. When it's in that orbit, then bingo, that rocket goes off, and it's freed from the inertia of the gravity field. And our work, to me, is that rocket that allows us to break free, even if it's only for a moment, from the inertia of the unresolved generational drama and trauma. So my take in that specific circumstance with you and your dad would be the rocket was Dad saying, "Son, are you here to be that space for me?" And Peter, having done enough work to recognize a past with some traumas, with Dad being able to simply throw all that aside and say, "I be here, Papa," or "Papa, I'm here, Dad."
I actually had
that would be the rocket booster.
And, yeah, thank you. And I actually had the thought of the 2 weeks that I was spending with him 24/7. I think it was the second or third day. It was so clear in my mind that, okay, I have this opportunity here now. So to really choose the love, and that was the only task I had. I'd heard you say several times about your new understanding or new insight of what your role as a grandparent is.
Yes.
With Aria. And my thinking when I've heard you say that, that's like, well, that is the role of the human being. And
yes,
when I get what you're saying so clearly when you have the relationship with Aria, but really that is the task at hand. And I, during that those first days with my father, and when I had that thought, I also remembered the closing days of 2019 at Heartland. When you looked at my evaluation sheet, you said these changes are for you to keep, and that very phrase came to me during that process with my dad. So it kind of makes sense what you're saying, that
you'd solidified enough of it that it was yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just happened. Yeah. It just so-called happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Only took 30 years of work for it to happen.
Yeah. And I was going to say I wanted to, I mean, that's my question. I wanted to, like you say, like a will of action to make it happen now. And
yes.
But I hear your answer, and keep on keeping on is the answer.
Yeah. And so now when you want to have that open with your son, what's the inertia? What are the energetic dynamics based in fear, sadness, grief, loss, anger that lay within you unresolved between fathers and sons in your bloodline, in your family system, in your culture, and in your own relationship with Elliot? Do the work on that, and that will be the booster rocket that will allow you to break free from that at a point when it's important to be that with Elliot. I know that, and I can kind of compare this. I hadn't thought of it this way, but I'm thinking of it this way now. We recently had time with Michael J. and his wife Jamie and their new baby, Kaylee Jo. And what we're talking about here is akin to, and I said this on the show when we came back from that vacation with them, we've only met, they live in Kansas City and we're here in Bristol, Virginia, a 13-hour drive away, 10-hour drive, whatever it is. And we've only been with Kaylee Jo 3 times now. And this last week, there was a new energy connection akin to what it is that we're talking about. And it was like when they were getting ready to get on the plane and fly back with the baby, it was like, wait a minute, you can't take that baby. She's coming back to Bristol with us. You can't have her. It's just like that kind of energetic connection. It's like, no, don't take it. And I experienced myself in a new level of that presence of love with Michael J. And it's like Kaylee Joe's energy as a newborn is kind of like, for me, was like the booster rocket that opened a new space between Michael J. and I. And a sweet space with his wife, Jamie. So Kaylee Joe was the fuel for that, for me, in this recent, this was just a few weeks ago that we did this vacation with them. And of course, the ultimate objective is for us all to live there continuously. I mean, what do you suppose the Earth is going to look like when 7.5 billion people wake up one morning and are in that space? It's like, maybe then we'll get to know what human life is really for and really about. When these resonances based in unresolved hate and fear and rage and guilt and generational pain and trauma and war, and when we finally work through those things, we get to experience what's that song, Broadway song, what's it all about, Elfie? That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, again, going back to the beginning, exempt no one from your love. The opposite of that would be to embrace, to welcome, and to include everything.
Yes. Yeah, and to include everything, even the good, the bad, as far as to the good, the bad, and the ugly. Ultimately, can we be that committed to it, that state of being stays present in our physiology, whatever our minds are telling us about what's happening inside or outside of us?
Yeah, because everything I so-called see is reflection of what I have within.
Correct.
So if my world that I'm experiencing is not what you talk about now, well then that is a reflection back to me.
Yes, exactly.
Because, as you said, it's not simple. It's rather hard, but that's how simple it is, and it's the process itself. It can be a bit challenging.
Just a bit challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And yes, Jeanie, actually your father passed on a Saturday, I think, 18th of March. My father passed on the 19th of March. So yes, I followed your process from here.
I'll tell you, his passing was such a one that he waited for us to get there. After Jeanie had that internal conversation with him, we had the MindShifters and Still Point Breathing workshop, and she had that conversation with him, and we finished the workshop, went to the hospital, and then he waited for us, and then he just let us share in that precious space where that opening occurred that was so precious, so sacred, I guess is the word. That
beautiful.
It's hard to be, I can think of times when I thought of someone passing and how traumatic it is. It's hard to be in trauma when we were able to share that space with him, and the sweetness with which he just, it was clear where he was going. I mean, the only thing left was a shell. It wasn't him laying on the bed after he passed. It was so clear. And, how do you get upset about that?
Sad, yes, but upset, no. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. very much so.
Well, it's awesome to hear that your work is moving forward like that, and that Tanya is with you in that, and that you can share those conversations with your son. I mean, think about how different would our lives have been if our fathers, mine and yours, have been able to have that conversation with us when we were young. I mean, I could never imagine my father even being close to even be able to think about the kind of conversation. And if we can get this into common experience in the culture, that it's just the conversation that's there, how different it's going to be for every child coming up. Like, we've got this chance to really become a planet that is filled with actual humans, actual active present love, human life, rather than human forms with all the unresolved traumas and dramas and generational patterns that most families have never even thought could even be resolved, let alone work at resolving them. I mean, think about, you shared some of what your early traumas were with your dad. Think about the difference you've made, Peter, in one generation when you think about your father's relationship and behaviors toward you and your relationship and behaviors toward your son in one generation. That's monumental. But that takes hold in mass on planet Earth. That's what this is all about. So joining you in it, that everyone between you and Sweden and us here in Virginia, as the energy exchange happens between us, everyone between us is touched by that energy moving through the structure of the Earth. Because it does move through it. And when you think of the physicist Yeshua, who said a little leavening leavens the whole loaf, and that he clearly wasn't talking about bread, he was talking about us each being the leavening that brings that energy into physiology, which is, the symbolic bread, the thing to be transformed. Human life arriving on Earth.
And that's why I so wanted it with Elliot to be in that very space of love. So cancel the goal for that. But it was so, since I had it almost vibrating in the back of my mind, and I still remember the situation where I was sitting on this couch and wanting to bring myself into that very space where we could sit in that space that me and my father sat in, and cancel the goal for that and keep on.
And look what you gave your son in that conversation. Your father never could have conceived of offering that conversation to you. And look what your son, okay, you didn't do it fully and perfectly, but look at, your son knows what's possible. What happens, I mean, you guys are still carrying forward with it, but what happens with his son? And he's got this head start on it. And the fact that, what was he, about 10 months when he was first exposed to the principles of why is this happening to me again, and still point breathing in a whole room full of people, tapped into the presence of love?
Yep.
The difference you've made in one generation? And the question isn't what's in your wallet, it's what's in your genes.
Yeah. Good sentence. Bumper sticker.
Yeah, a bumper sticker. Exactly. exactly.
Well, that's also so interesting. Looking back at this, I mean, my father, he was challenged, and then 2 weeks of being really challenged, and then he passed. And these 2 weeks, looking back at it, and it's weird to say that it's almost the best time that I've had with him. And then looking at how we, the society, do. We institutionalize the old people, we institutionalize young people, and it's just another way of that. It's how lost we are. We remove ourselves from that very situation of being, like you said, with that baby of Michael J, and then or with my situation with my father, and instead we institutionalize and remove ourselves from that. Crazy.
Yeah. And, when I think about what you've given your son and the head start that he's got, when do you suppose there was a parent in your bloodline or mine that left with the gift that you gave your father? When do you suppose was the last time that was seen? I.e., what was your father's relationship like with your grandfather?
Oh.
So Dad got to leave with, just such a monumental gift.
Yes.
Jeannie's dad got to leave with both of us standing there holding his hand. He just looked at some pictures of his granddaughter, was laughing and smiling about 3 minutes before his last breath, and we were both there just holding the space and reflecting love to him. And it's like, that's what he carried with him. Look what your father carried with him.
Yeah, it looks like they left with us, but no, they left with the space. They left with the space of love. That's
exactly.
Thank you.
Monumental, just monumental. Breathing with you. And we all have work to do. Work goes on.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to put this show in the special archives so that anyone dealing with issues of family and people leaving can have a different, at least a vision of a different possibility.
Well, I just want to extend my enormous gratitude for the work, for you and for the work, and for bringing me to this place. Thank you. Gratitude.
Honored and delighted. Just totally and completely my blessing to be able to do it. That's what makes it all worthwhile. So thank you for saying thank you and passing it on.
Thank you.
All right, my friend. You have a blessed one. Everybody, thank you for joining us. It's been a delight, and create the best year yet of your eternal life. Give the gift away. Exempt no one. Well, let's change the language, because some of the regulatory speech in the course is not that great. Embrace everyone in your love. And then you will be embracing the part of you in need of healing, and your healing will be complete in that. Blessings. Bye-bye.